Welcome to Payment Matters today, the show where we discuss all things healthcare payments. I'm your host, Jeff Lin. Thanks for listening in. Today, I'm joined by our special guest, Shannon Lingwall of University of Utah. Thanks for being here today, Shannon. Shannon, do you mind just doing a quick introduction about yourself and your role at University of Utah?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I am a revenue cycle manager for University of Utah Health, and I'm really primarily focused on the training, and it's the training for a group called Revenue Cycle Support Services. And we basically take care of all the financial piece of what happens with the patient from scheduling all the way through bill resolution. So we have about 22 different teams within our department, and we do a special training around operations and why we do what we do within healthcare so we can understand what's happening for all of those teams that we have throughout the department.
Great. So that sounds like a really big role, a lot of responsibility. So just for the group here, some of our listeners may not understand what is revenue cycle management in a hospital such as University of Utah. So how would you describe that if you're talking to your mom, relative, et cetera? What is revenue cycle management?
So revenue cycle management really is around the financial impact of the patients and their experience through the revenue cycle. So 80% of our department actually does not have any patient interaction on a daily basis. 20% does. But we all take care of our patients and we care about the experience that they have. And so every piece that we do throughout the revenue cycle really affects the other pieces and how that billing experience is experienced by the patient, essentially. So it's all about making sure that from the time that they call in for their appointment to the time that the bill is resolved, that it's a smooth transaction. And if that happens, they won't even know we exist. So that's the best case scenario.
No news is good news.
Absolutely. Yep.
So it sounds like you've been involved in developing a training program and owning that there. Before you were involved, how was training conducted, or what was involved with that?
So before we built this training program, the structure really looked like they would go through IT training, and IT training is teaching on Epic, which is the EHR that we use. And it was, this button, you hit this button and it does this. And so that's kind of what the training looked like. And it was really a formality to get your security and be able to start working within Epic. And then they would go to their units, and the units would teach whatever level of training they had built for each one of the teams. And so that usually involves, sitting behind someone, shadowing, doing some things, having someone else watch you until they feel like you're ready to go, but not really getting the full impact or full story of the revenue cycle to know exactly where you fit.
So you talk about the full story, and I think in many aspects, sometimes I'm just heads down on my job, my spreadsheet, my document, and so on. And how do you expand or kind of create that visibility into other aspects of the organization so they're not in a silo? Right?
Yeah. One of the tools that we use through the training is we built a video called Following a Patient's Journey. And, people work within the revenue cycle and they really don't even know where they fit into the revenue cycle. So we've kind of gone around and asked that question, what section do you fit in? And they look at you a little bit puzzled. Our group knows exactly which step of the revenue cycle they fit into. They know who affects them and who they affect on the tail end of it also. And so for us, it's really knowing every piece of it and being empowered by the information that you have. So the Following a Patient's Journey, we took a patient and we created an injury that they had, and then we just took them through the entire process. So step by step, piece by piece, we would bring up what section of the revenue cycle you were currently in as the process was going through, so that people could visualize exactly what was happening with that patient and understand where they fit in. So
this program, or this video that you created that shows the life cycle and the journey of a patient and the revenue cycle process. What kind of results or benefits have you seen as part of this program?
It's actually been incredible. So like I said, we are over a group of 320 people, and our University of Utah Health actually encompasses 19,000 people. And so we started showing it in our department to our new hires and to our existing employees. And then we started having other areas say, now I heard you have this video that really shows the patient experience, and can we get a copy of that video? So it's really, people are talking about the video and for once understanding, where they're at within that, and watching the patient go through the whole experience and seeing why every single piece of their job matters and it all connects to the bottom line of the hospital.
Those are really great results. Training is an interesting aspect here, right? Because it's all about, I'll call it, there's change involved, in other industries they call it change management, and it's a people business. And how do you approach call it the people aspect? In terms of getting their skills or getting their, I call it their abilities from a day-to-day perspective up to that level. What's the approach on that?
So I think our approach may surprise some people. Our approach is really to make it engaging, to make it fun. And so from the very first second that they step into training, we split them into 2 teams. They come up with a team name and they compete throughout the entire week. So we use all kinds of different activities and all kinds of games. And throughout all of those, what it's really doing is tricking them into hearing the concept multiple times. By the time we get through it, they've heard it 4 or 5 different times, but really it comes through in a hands-on activity that they do, or a review game before the assessment, or actually hitting that concept that they're doing. So we kind of trick it in there a little bit with them getting it multiple times so that they understand all of it. And then we really are responsible to build resources for our department. So when we do the assessment, it's an open book assessment. The only thing they can't use is their neighbor next to them. So they can use all the resources that were given to them. Healthcare is, as you know, crazy with acronyms, right? So if you join in healthcare, you go into a meeting, you're going to hear all kinds of acronyms and have no idea what people are talking about. So we found that it's really intimidating for people to actually ask what the acronym means, but we built an acronym master. So they're able to reference that. They can, in a meeting, jot down what those acronyms are, go back to their desk, reference that acronym master, and then they can be informed in what was going on. So it's a little less intimidating than having to stop a meeting and ask right during the meeting.
Yeah, what's going on? It's interesting you talk about games and we hear it in other industries, gamification and so on. Can you describe an example of a game that's effective in communicating sort of how you approach training?
Yes. So one of my favorite games is called Revenue Cycle and You. So after we've done about the first day of training, we give them the revenue cycle, but it's deconstructed. So they have all the little pieces, and we ask them to try to put the revenue cycle in order. And of course, we're not looking for them to get it 100% correctly, every single piece in the exact order. We're trying to get them to understand when the patient is in the service, and then they'll hit a bridge on our revenue cycle, and then the statement kind of takes over from then. And that's when we can, get bill resolution by the end of it. So we're trying to get them to understand what's historically been, kind of on the front end, and what's historically been in the billing end of things. And then we also provide stars, and they're supposed to put a star on every piece of the revenue cycle that they affect and that affects them. And so there is no surprise that there's enough stars for every single section of the revenue cycle, because we're trying to get them to understand everyone affects everyone else throughout the cycle as we move through doing our own jobs.
That's great. As I listen to this, and there's talk about, I think onboarding new employees is a critical part of getting someone engaged in any organization. Maybe can you talk about how that program exists today? What happens when a new employee joins, and what's your involvement within that?
Yeah, absolutely. My team actually owns onboarding for our entire department. So we're kind of the first face that our new hires see when they come to the department. So our onboarding process includes making sure that they're signed up for our operational training. We get them signed up for their IT classes. We assign those prereqs that may need to be done before they go to any of those trainings. We make sure that their security is all in place, so they have their Epic templates requested, so that once they go through IT training, it automatically triggers that to be active. We also give them S-Drive access, which is where all of our files are located. We also, as owning onboarding within the department, what we did this last year is we worked with all 22 teams to build team sites. So we have a Pulse intranet that holds all of our information that's very specific to University of Utah Health. But we built team sites on every single one of those, and we worked with the managers and directors to get a sign-off on that, so that there is a one-stop shop for brand new hires to go. So all of the information that they would possibly need is in one place. So when your manager's gone and your supervisor is gone, then you won't have to go to a coworker and get 3 different stories from 3 different coworkers on how we should be doing something. Everything is is laid out down to even our quality reviews, what's expected of you. And if you don't complete what's expected of you, what are the repercussions of that? And then how do we kind of get you back on track and get you moving again? So we have all of that. We have contact information. We just basically are trying to empower new employees to be successful in their position.
Got it. And is it a lot of, so it sounds like there's an ongoing element with the internet and that portal there. Is there actual classroom-based training? Is it, do you take them out for a week, 3 days? How does that?
Yeah, so absolutely. The operational training, we have one full day of orientation into the department, which is more policies and procedures. We take them on a tour of the hospital and also the business office so that they know where everything is and feel like they start seeing different people. We created videos of all the directors, so it's really personal, and when they see them in the halls, they know exactly who they are. We've done a lot of things for that orientation day, and then the second and third days, the second day is Revenue Cycle Basics 1. And that's where we really introduce all the concepts within the revenue cycle. And then we have some add-on trainings along with that. We teach them OneNote right from the very first day so they can take notes throughout the training, but then also be ready to hit their team because all of our teams utilize OneNote. And then the third day is Revenue Cycle Basics 2. And what we do is go right back over all of the same information that we did in Basics 1, but with a deeper dive into it. So at that point, we add activities that are hands-on activities that they're going into a playground environment, and they're able to actually go through all the activities and do the activities, and then just see where things are before they even head to IT training. So it's a little less intimidating when they hit IT training because of that. And then on the fourth day, it's a short day. It's only until, from about 8 to 10 in the morning, but we do 2 huge reviews from day 1 and day 2, and then we do an assessment at the end. So the assessment is a 50-question assessment that they have to pass at 80% or greater, and it's open notes. They can use all the notes that they've taken. They can use all the resources, even the PowerPoints that we utilize for training. They can go back and reference those. And really, it's making sure that they know where to find all of their resources so that when they get back, they have those resources available to them and they know how to actually use them. So all in all, it's about 3.5 day training that we have them, and then we schedule them for their IT training that following week. So between our training and IT training, it's about the first 2 weeks, and then they head to the units and they do still some of that unit level training where they'll shadow with them and, learn very unit specific things about their job.
And that's great. I think that's critical. I think even with my own company that we do something very similar to that. And I think that's really helpful. It kind of builds those bonds when you do that training. What about ongoing training or there's the initial getting to know the system, getting to know my unit, getting to know the IT, but what happens after an employee's been here for X number of years, X number of months? How does it what's the ongoing program look like?
So we actually have multiple modules that are available to them ongoing. So a lot of them we refer to as development modules, and some of those are done in teams and some can be individual. But we built like a communication module for the employees to try to help to learn to communicate a little bit better. They take a quiz as to what communication type they are, and then we kind of get them into those different types. And this may sound a little crazy, but we give them a card and we ask them to tell us how they make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So in 1.5 minutes, they have to write on a card how to do that. And really what we're doing is illustrating the different communication styles that the groups have. So you can see by the way that they put that out there, how they operate. And it teaches the other groups, that we're all trying to get to the same thing, right? We want to be able to make the sandwich, but how we go about it may be a little bit different. So just understanding those different communication styles. We also built a teamwork module that if you've heard of breakout rooms where you have to kind of escape from a room within a given amount of time, for the teamwork one, we actually, for some crazy reason, our exec team wouldn't let us put padlocks on the conference room doors. I don't know why, but so we had to get creative with it, and we bought a breakout EDU box, and we have 8 different locks that lock that box down, and they have to find the clues and do all the different things to open it. But really what's happening during that time are my trainers are in there and they're kind of evaluating how they're working together as a team and what mistakes are they making and what could they have done to be a little bit more efficient to get into that box. And then they do the last 20 minutes of debrief and really talk it through with them so they can understand. But people learn by doing things a lot of the time. our newest module that we rolled out is called Supervisor Prep Academy. And this is really, we're also in charge of professional growth throughout our department. And so the Supervisor Prep is for people that are interested in becoming a supervisor. And a lot of people want to be a supervisor because the name sounds amazing, right? I'm going to be a supervisor. But they really don't know what the job entails. And so some people get the job and hate the job because they had no idea what it really meant. And so what we do is we have two different 2-hour sessions, and they're a couple months apart from each other. And we walk them through what it looks like to be a supervisor, and we give them training that supervisors would get. So a little bit higher level, a little bit kind of dipping your toes into it, not a full, crucial conversations or, trust type of class, but we go, touch on those subjects. And then they also have 25 checklist items that they have to complete within the 6 months that they're in the program. And those items are attending a meeting with your supervisor, actually presenting at a meeting, for your supervisor, coming up with an innovative idea and seeing if it can be implemented on the team. So there are lots of different things that we do with that checklist to really prep them to see what it would be like to be a supervisor. So that's some of our ongoing things that we do. We have many, many other modules, but that we are always creating and building something new so the department can keep growing. And, when we first started, you say the word training and people are like, oh my gosh, 3.5 days of training. And you can literally see it on their face as they walk in. And I think by about the first hour to hour and a half within the program, they're laughing, they're having a great time, we're marking points, they're competing against each other, they're helping each other. You just see the culture of training change. And now, since our programs have been rolled out, we actually roll out a new program and we have a waiting list to get people through the trainings. So people are voluntarily signing up for them instead of us saying this is a mandatory training. So
wow,
it's been great.
As I listen to you speak, I hear there's you have trainers that are training. You're creating videos. You're creating content. It's almost like a multi-channel aspect here, and it's beyond the 3.5 days for a new employee onboarding. There's probably a lot of prep work involved here. So from a team structure perspective, is this team 100 people, 500? Can you talk about how do you, what's involved? What's your structure like?
I wish it were 100 people. That would be amazing. Yeah. No, I actually have a team of 3 trainers. So it's myself as the manager, and then I have 2 operational trainers that train the first portion that we talked about, that revenue cycle training. And then I have one that's dedicated to a professional training, which we haven't really touched on, but that professional training is more around accountability and barriers to empowerment and definitions of success or reasons for upset, basically things that can help them in their professional and personal life to be able to have better relationships with people. And then all of them together focus on our customer service trainings, our development modules, those supervisor prep classes, all of those different ones. And so scheduling is key for us. We have to be really careful about how we schedule and when we schedule things out. But we are getting so much response from our department, and other areas are starting to hear about it, that institutionally we have gotten a lot of asks for people to have my team come out and train, which is amazing, but my team is small. So we're kind of starting to try to work through some of those things and how we can be able to help the institution as a whole instead of just our department. But some of the statistics and stuff that have increased for our department alone, so engagement within our university, we're at a 93rd percentile. But for academic medical centers, the department of 320, they are at 98% in percentile for that. And so it's really impressive where we've come in the last 3 years. And people are starting to take notice of that through the different surveys that happen. And then also our employee retention has increased by 20%.
Wow.
And if you know anything about turnover and the cost of turnover in organizations, that's a lot of cost savings for our department. And so now we have, other exec members saying, how are you doing this and what's happening, and really wanting to get engaged with what's going on in the department.
Those are just amazing results as you look across this. As other similar healthcare organizations are looking to pursue these programs, any lessons learned or best practices in terms of implementing these type of training programs?
Right. Yeah, you're crazy if you think there's never lessons learned from building something like this, right? So the build process of this took us about 8 months to actually build the content. And in that time, we decided, the managers are the content experts and they know everything. So every manager individually gave us what their story was, and we kind of compiled that into a training. And I was kind of like, some of this is repeating and some things, feel not quite right, but we went for it and we did the dry run and it failed. It was too much information. It was too much repetitive information coming through. And so we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, let's break this down. And you could absolutely see the silos in the first run that we put out there. And we thought we have to break that down. That's the point of what we're doing here. So we did that, made sure that everything connected a little bit better, made sure that the level for our new hires and for our existing employees was not too much information, was not something that would send them kind of running for the hills, but absolutely empower them in what they're doing in their jobs. So that was a huge lesson learned for us. We needed to take the time and really get it out there and make sure that it was at the right level. Now, once we rolled it out, that wasn't the end of us changing and building and improving the program. We spent the next year using the satisfaction surveys from each of my trainers as they taught these different modules to make sure that we had the program right, to make sure that there weren't other amazing ideas from some of our people that came through that they wanted that we could incorporate and add into the training. So in total, it was probably about 1.5 years till we felt like this is operating at an amazing, rate and that everything was running really smoothly. So that was something. And then also a lessons learned before we even started. There were not great relationships between our department and the IT training world. It was very much like, they wanted to own their piece of training and we knew operations. And so function and operations don't always talk to each other very well. And so the first thing that we did was sit down and say, we're going to change this relationship with them and we're going to, collaborate and work together. And so that's what we did, was go in and say, how can we complement what you do and get them to understand the why behind what they're doing in their jobs. So those are some of the biggest things I think for people to watch for as they're getting ready to build a program like this.
That's great. And anything else that you want to share or amazing results you want to share with our listeners today? This has been extremely helpful and insightful for me.
Yeah, I think just some of the results that we've seen are people actually feeling empowered, and my team ends up being kind of their first friend, I guess, in the department. So we end up being an ongoing resource for them, and my team's motto is really that we don't say that's not my job. So if somebody comes to us with a question and it's not something that we deal with, we say, we'll get back to you on that. And so really, it is, I think, the trust and the friendship that those new hires feel with my team right from out the gate. And then we also noticed another great win, I think, for us was we had rolled this out for new hires and thinking it's so important to onboard people, right? And then we had a bunch of existing employees say, but what about us? There's 300 other people sitting there already. And, and we were like, well, shoot, yeah, we need to get you guys through too, right? So we had to kind of work out a process of getting them through and making sure that they had the opportunity to come through. We had someone that came through that had been with the organization for 32 years. And at the end of it, her jaw was just on the ground. And she said, I never knew what happened around, my section, which was coding. And she's like, I never have felt so empowered in my entire career. And, she's on the tail end of that career, but she said it was so worth her time, and so worth the, being empowered by the information and being able to speak to other people about the revenue cycle and actually understanding what it is. So those were great wins for us.
Shannon, this is an amazing story. And I think it really shows it's all about the people at the end of the day and the impact that training can actually have on their lives, but also on their day-to-day activities from a work perspective. And once again, thank you so much for joining us as our special guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. And those are the payment matters we're tackling today. Thanks for listening in, and special thanks to my guest, Shannon Lingwall. Really interesting to see how training has an impact on the people, but also their day-to-day activities with work. Remember that you can listen in to this episode weekdays at 4:30 a.m., 12:30 p.m., and 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If you have a comment about this episode or show, follow hashtag Payment Matters or connect with me on Twitter at Jeff B. Lin. You can learn more about my show at healthcarenowradio.com or at instamed.com. Until next time, I'm Jeff Lin.